Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fall 2021 Intern Final Presentations. Each semester, we have an amazing group of interns working with our projects and functional area teams, and this semester has been no different. We were excited to be joined by folks from all over who spent the past 10 weeks writing blog posts, contributing to reports, researching, planning events, meeting with staff and external stakeholders, and everything in between. Interns, while the final presentations signify an end to the program, I'm very much looking forward to hearing about the amazing work you all have done, and I'm hopeful that you found your time with BPC to be educational and valuable. With that, I hope you'll all join me in congratulating the Fall 2021 interns, and now I'll turn it over for our first presentations.
Hi, my name is Tiffany, and I am the HR intern for the Fall 2021 semester here at the BPC. And I hope you enjoyed my final presentation. So at the beginning of my internship, my team informed me that I would have 3 areas of focus. One would be the internship process and gaining feedback and suggestions from fellow interns and employees. Project 2 would focus on employee feedback surrounding HR and what could be better or what could be improved upon at the BPC. And the third project would focus on staff engagement and communication. So project 1, like I said, focused on the internship process. So I did do 2 focus groups, one for interns and one for intern managers. The intern focus group consisted of about 6 interns, and I just asked questions about their onboarding process, managerial support. Did they feel like it was a good learning experience for them, and things of that sort. And I feel that the outcome was very good, very positive. Similarly, the same with the intern manager focus group, just asking them about things that they felt could be better in the internship program, their experience with the interns this semester, and things that they wanted improved in the future. And I gained some really good feedback from that. Project 2 focused on employee feedback of HR at the BPC, and I did individual interviews with various staff and employees at the BPC, and I asked questions surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion, benefits, support from managers, and different things that HR could do better in the future. And this was one of my favorite projects that I worked on this semester throughout my internship. So I really got some good feedback from this as well. And lastly, project 3 focused on staff engagement and communication. This was more so of a brainstorming activity than it was an actual project. And I'm looking forward to actually putting some of these ideas into action next semester. But some of my ideas was a virtual wall of fame where we celebrate various BPC employees, maybe doing some mixers and activities where we can hang out and, kind of form relationships and engagement across departments. And also some daily employee icebreakers that can involve some prizes at random. So those were some of my ideas to increase staff engagement and communication in the virtual workspace throughout the pandemic. Some of my daily internship tasks and experiences included uploading and learning about Fresh Team. It included doing some BPC events. I did that every Monday. I would upload about that, editing job descriptions, planning events and scheduling meetings, along with learning about the various BPC policies and procedures. All of these things were very valuable experiences for me and really got me thinking about what areas of HR I really wanted to focus on moving forward. So overall, I feel that this internship experience was fantastic. I have no complaints. I really want to give a shout out to my team, the HR team, which consists of Cal, Fanon, and Mike. We are a smaller team, but I feel like they really had my back and they were there to support me every step of the way. I love that it was a great work environment, even though it was virtual. I love that everyone at the BPC embraced me. And ultimately, I have no complaints about the internship. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed my presentation and thank you. Have a great day.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel. This year, I interned with the business and tech team under Tom and John. Right now, I am an undergraduate student at Allegheny College in the class of 2023. I'm currently a computer science major and political science and philosophy double minor. I also am pursuing a law and policy concentration, which essentially brings me to a large passion in data ethics and data privacy. I'm also from Pittsburgh, so I did my internship remotely this year, but it was really nice to see everyone holding meetings in the office. I want to highlight really quickly why I chose BPC. Initially, it allowed me to explore my interest in technology policy. So on the business and tech team, I spent a lot of time conducting research on just up and coming technologies and how we can shape the legislation around them. BPC also allowed me to place a high emphasis on my education and continue studying my undergraduate disciplines while also pursuing my interest. And I also just had a strong alignment with company values. At BPC, I focused on two main projects, the first of which was AI ethics research. This can be broken down into three large parts. The first part is an ethical framework for AI usage as proposed by civil society. So this was an extensive document compiled by myself, just listing all of the different civil society frameworks. Then I was able to compare the difference between AI ethics research, AI impact assessment, and AI risk assessment, which are three key components of just ethical frameworks. And then the final part is proposing research on the differences between the impact, risk, and ethic assessments under the AI frameworks, and then determining the different sentiments of that. This will have three key uses. The first is to determine which frameworks have the most positive sentiment, just overall between the three key breakdowns. Then which regions of the globe have the most positive sentiment in relation to one another under each different type of framework. And then just to determine what even a positive sentiment means, not only globally, but under the frameworks themselves. The second large project that I worked on was a technology policy node map. Essentially, this allows us to interact with a graph of the policies. So what we've done was created just a long list of technology policies that were put out by current legislators. So in doing so, we actually used ProPublica to scrape congress.gov to put all of this into a CSV file. We then are uploading this to Amazon AWS to store it in a database. And then from the database, we will be using Network X to create an interactive map, which will allow us to plot the different policies, allow users to interact and move them around according to their liking, and will also allow us to see where legislators have sponsored, co-sponsored, or voted on technology policies, just to see where the breakdown is between them. So from this experience, I have some very key learning takeaways. The first and most important is the power of bipartisanship. I learned the importance of presenting a policy issue from both sides, which was something that I had experience from with my political science minor, but the hands-on application really solidified the importance of this for me. I also, and this was one of my favorite key takeaways, was how to evaluate these ethical consequences of large policy actions from a bipartisan standpoint. This really came into play when I did my AI ethics framework research. And I also learned how to critically examine the impact of potential policy actions from a bipartisan standpoint. Typically, I've done research from one standpoint or the other, but really publishing it under a bipartisan standpoint has reframed this for me. I also, and this was one of my goals coming into the internship, was learning how technology policy is written and shaped, because my goal in the future academically is to attend a graduate institution to study technology policy, and just having the basic understanding of how it's written and shaped is really helpful for me. Before I end my presentation, I would really like to thank my managers, Tom and John, other people that I've worked with, Sabine, Michelle, and Anna, and my fellow intern, Nick, for a fantastic semester. I really enjoyed working with everyone. And I will send my personal email out to anyone who would like to stay connected. I've had a great time and I really appreciate my experience here so far. Thank you all for making it informative and for shaping my semester in such a positive way.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for a wonderful semester, and thank you for allowing some of us to pre-record. I'm sorry I can't be there in person or real-time person, but I am, as you are watching this, taking a public finance exam. So education must come first, and please wish me luck. So to start out a little bit about me, I am a senior at Elon University. I'm studying economics with policy studies as one of my minors. Previously, I've done some work with the American Action Forum and AEI as well. So coming into BPC, I definitely wanted to get some more experience in bipartisanship, which I think has been a wonderful experience so far, and I have gained a lot. And going forward, I would love to continue my experience within the think tank world and the policy world in general and pursue economic policy post-grad. I'd also like to complete a master's at some point, but we'll see when that happens. That'll be a play it by ear. So that is a little bit about me. Moving on to some of the contributions that I've made to the team and some amazing things that I've been able to take away. I've been working on the EPP team while I've been here, so I've had the great honor to work with the fiscal team, higher ed, labor market, and also a little bit with Funding Our Future. And so for the fiscal team, I think that's where I spent the majority of my time. I managed to contribute to the monthly inflation explainer, as well as the monthly deficit tracker. I assisted in the writing of the on-demand pay draft that is currently still in the works, but hopefully we'll have a rough draft done by Thanksgiving. I've also done some data entry with them on the debt limit model, which has obviously been a big thing for BPC recently. And then just in general, I've done some research notes, coming up with questions for them for their various projects. With higher ed, I wrote an accreditation explainer for them, which hopefully will come out at some point soon. And then I've also done some various data and citation checks for them as well on their larger pieces. And for the labor market and paid family leave team, I did some research on states' use of ARPA funding in order to replenish their unemployment insurance trust funds, which was very interesting. Didn't get much out of that, I'll be honest with you. States will do what states will do, but it was very interesting to look into. And then also just done some data work for them as well with recipiency rates. So I was glad to be able to dip my toe into some very different policy areas. I mostly just focused on labor market before now, so I'm glad I managed to widen my horizons in that way. And to finish up briefly, I wanted to talk about what I'll be taking away from this whole experience. As an intern on the EPP team, we set goals at the very beginning. And so I thought I would take you through quickly my 3 goals that I set and talk about how I have managed to achieve them, which is wonderful. I wanted to improve upon my ability to network with professionals in this field. And I have talked with multiple members of the EPP team for their career advice. I now feel a lot more confident moving forward into job application season and knowing where I want to take this and what I want my career to be. So I appreciate everyone that talked to me. Does not go unnoticed. And then another goal of mine was just to have a better understanding of the use of data in the policy world. I'm fairly confident in my writing, but my data work not so much. So in order to improve upon this, I did talk to the team and say, please hand me some easy data stuff that I can figure out on the job. And they did so, and that was really helpful. So I feel more confident in that for sure. And then lastly, I wanted to become more well-versed in a wider variety of policy areas, which, as I mentioned on the previous slide, I've been able to do in working with each of these teams. So I very much appreciate it. I want to thank the whole EPP team, along with Andrew Orbe, my wonderful project manager, and Douglas, who was my partner in crime and my intern alongside me in all of this. It's been a really wonderful experience, and I appreciate all of you taking the time to improve our careers as well as work so hard on your own. It doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you to everyone, and I hope that we can stay connected.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christopher Malcolmson, and I've had the pleasure of being the Energy Team's intern this fall. To give you a little bit of a background about myself, I'm originally from the beautiful state of Montana, as you can see there on the left. I'm a senior at George Washington University, and I am studying government and economics. I came to BPC hoping to gain a lot of experience in the energy world on all issues, climate change, economic, and economic issues. So during my internship, I took on some responsibilities that have been pretty rewarding. I've attended a total of 5 committee hearings across 3 different committees and subcommittees, spanning issues from the pipeline incident off the West Coast to how to reward farmers for implementing carbon efficient practices. I have also had the opportunity to read every news clip that involved the BPC energy team, as well as keep our legislation trackers updated with everything that Congress is doing. Finally, I have worked time and time again on a draft for an offshore wind blog that will be published probably later this year in Q1 of 2022. I've added a couple paragraphs about state level commitments across the East and West Coasts, as well as continually updated the provisions that were included and then removed and then included again in the Infrastructure Investment and also the Build Back Better Act. All these responsibilities have been an excellent opportunity to grow my knowledge base and to really delve into the energy world, which is exactly where I'll get into my experience. I'll say that BPC has a fantastic culture that is really supportive of interns, whether it be BPC itself, as in the individual teams, or BPC Action. I've been able to reach out to a bunch of staffers to set up interviews, to learn about their career paths, their thoughts on the DC world, and on different policy issues. So it's been really exciting to get to talk to all of these people who are working on relevant issues, who have connections on the Hill, who have worked in government agencies, and for them to all be so open and working with interns. I've also, as I've already said, had the opportunity to expand my knowledge base on all things energy and on a lot of economic policies, which is going to inform my job search here in a few months, and is something that makes me feel more confident I actually have something to bring to the table when I eventually do apply for those jobs. I've also learned how to write in a non-academic setting. It's very different writing publications for a think tank than it is writing a paper for a professor. It is also very different writing tweets for events for a think tank than it is writing for a professor. So the opportunity to have an iterative process like with the offshore wind blog has been great. And I, again, feel more confident going into the workforce. And finally, the last thing I've brought away from my experience is that even though bipartisanship is hard, and I say that from someone from a state that former President Trump won by 20 points, but that had a Democratic governor for 16 years, even though it's hard, it is great. And the stuff we're doing here is pretty fantastic. And being an intern, sitting in a hearing can sound boring, but when you're doing it to help save the climate and you're doing it for an organization that actively works across the aisle, that's a pretty awesome experience. So overall, I just want to say thank you to BPC for making this a paid internship, opening the door to a lot of low-income first-generation students like myself, for the awesome intern supervisors I've had in Alyssa, Emma, and Rachel, and for the whole team, and for BPC Action for being so open to meeting with interns and sharing their experience with me. Thank you.
Hey everybody, my name is Teresa Pham. I was interning with the health team this semester on the prevention side. So a little bit about me. I am a second-year PhD student in the School of Public Health at Tulane. I am also an opioid surveillance epidemiologist for the Louisiana Department of Health. And my current research focuses on substance use among late adolescents and young adults. I am also doing a policy analysis on the health consequences of changes in marijuana policy in the US. And I'm on a study that looks at the health impacts of COVID-19 on Vietnamese older adults in New Orleans. So as a surveillance opioid epidemiologist for Louisiana, I was really grateful to be interning with BPC this semester because I worked primarily on the project focusing on federal funding related to the opioid epidemic. So we were evaluating different funding streams for the opioid epidemic, and the team found 4 priority areas that they're making recommendations out of and writing a report to be submitted in March. These priority areas are discretionary funding, mandatory funding, data and metrics. This is something that I worked really closely on because I am a data analyst and I work firsthand with opioid data at the state level, so I understand the barriers and the challenges. And lastly, governance. So as part of the internship, I helped review discretionary funding for opioids and looking at the different outcomes of those. I created 2 policy memos using existing programs. So those are the Ryan White HIV/AIDS program and the Nursing Education Practice Quality and Retention Program. These are part of HRSA, and I use these programs as a framework for tailoring programs to substance use disorder. I attended the opioid task force meeting as well as roundtable follow-ups with stakeholders. And I also created a document that put in my state level perspective on ways to improve coordination between state government and the federal government to improve health outcomes and program implementation. So lessons learned from the internship, I gained some new writing skills. I'm very used to academic writing, but having written 2 policy memos, I learned the difference between policy writing versus academic writing. And as part of this process, I learned the pathways to bipartisanship when trying to get your recommendations to Congress. You really want to find champions on both sides that might be able to advance your recommendations. Cross-sector collaboration is vital in this process. So having follow-ups with specific members of the task force was very important for tailoring our recommendations and understanding their perspectives because they are the experts in this. And lastly, policy writing is an iterative process. Having gone through all of these meetings and task force meetings and follow-ups, what you originally present is not necessarily going to be what you end up with, your final product. So I'm very much looking forward to the report coming out in March. So thank you, BPC, for giving me this opportunity. I have my student email here if anyone wants to stay connected. And I want to thank Michelle Gilbert. She is the senior policy analyst on this project, and she really led all of this and helped me with my development and advancement throughout this internship program. And my intern manager, Thomas Armu, whose last day was last week, but just want to give him a shout out anyway. So thank you all.
Hi everyone, my name is Morgan Spencer and I was a research intern for Dr. Tevi Troy for the fall of 2021. So in this presentation, I'm just going to be talking about a lot of the different research aspects that I did under Dr. Tevi Troy and some other things such as conference planning and my takeaways from the internship in general. So when looking at the research files and research that I did for the books he's working on, there were many different topics I was able to help out with. And the first topic that I was assigned was looking at the issue of Christmas gifts and what Christmas gifts presidents gave to their staff members. And this is going to be a special article Tevi's writing for Christmas. Another aspect of this that I looked at was the fly on the wall campaigning style, and I got to learn a lot about the different people who really popularized this method. I also was able to look at illiberalism on campus and free speech and anti-communism in the US in the 1950s and the 1960s. Another fun one that I was able to work on were the nicknames that George W. Bush gave to his staff members. And right now, as a work in progress, I'm working on a research file concerning Bob Dole and the presidents. And there are 2 books that he's working on, which I was gathering information on as well. But unfortunately, those topics have to remain confidential for this moment. So when I was helping him do research and editing for newspaper articles, I edited an article that he wrote for the City Journal called The de Blasio Debacle, which really just covered the evolution of New York City under de Blasio. I also helped him out with a thing on presidential approval ratings, an article on conservative think tanks in flux, and I was able to transcribe a podcast for him for an article that he will be writing. And just The other aspect of this was conference planning, and this is a conference that Dr. Troy will be hosting in the spring sometime, and it's on the theme of the shifting role of the 21st century presidency. And for this, I created a list of attendees for him, and I also wrote all the bios for all of the presenters. And just my learnings and general takeaways from the BPC internship, I had a very hands-on experience with research, which was great. And another very great aspect of this was that I was able to work on many more topics and different types of research styles than I had originally anticipated. And just about the virtual internship experience in general, I thought it was great. I'm working virtually from California in a different time zone, and I had a very flexible schedule that I agreed on ahead of time with Dr. Troy, and we had weekly check-ins every Monday to make sure that I was on track. And just in general, there were virtual events that make you feel connected to the rest of the team in DC. And thanks so much for having me.
Hello, everyone. My name is James Torres. I'm a housing and infrastructure intern here at BPC. So a little bit about myself. I'm a senior at George Washington University. I study political science and communications. That's kind of enough for me. So today I'm actually going to deviate from the normal intern presentation format. Instead, I'm actually going to talk about the literal driest content of all housing policy, zoning. So let's start from the beginning. Why in the world would we need to talk about something as dry and dull as zoning? Well, the issue is the nation literally doesn't have enough housing for its population. Decades of deinvestment have led to nationwide housing shortages, and the lack of supply has driven up costs to the point where people are paying well over 20% above the asking price. Obviously, this makes homes less affordable, and people without the means to overpay for a house are being driven out of the housing market, and thereby putting their lives on pause. The market has literally failed to keep up with demand, and which has driven prices to ridiculous proportions. And you know who hurts the most? Our most vulnerable populations. No surprise there. Minorities, mainly our Black and Latino populations, are disproportionately being pushed out to the housing market. Women and victims of domestic abuse are forced to put up with their pain because they have literally nowhere else to go. And veterans, well, what can I say about veterans that hasn't really already been said? They are obviously struggling. They've put their lives on the lines for this country, and they come back to a nation that has been unwilling to pay for the expense of their care. So what can we do? Well, the problem is that affordable home construction is just far too expensive. Like labor shortages, supply chain shortages, excessive administrative costs unnecessarily tack on expenses to housing construction. And nobody really wants to deal with all of this work. But there are kind of simple solutions to this. We can help subsidize costs for first-time home buyers. Sorry. Oh, I went too quickly. We can subsidize costs for home buyers. We can build a greater rental assistance program, limit environmental regulations, and consolidate our administrative steps. And this should help end the housing problem, right? No, not really. These things will certainly help, but they're not going to get us out of the crisis. We need to hit the number one factor that is driving up costs and limits construction: zoning. It is the worst regulation that's stopping us from effectively ending the housing crisis. It has a history of dividing our communities by race and economic class. It stops people from moving into high opportunity areas. It drives up housing costs. It limits construction. It builds barriers between people and good paying jobs, and it destroys schools in our low income areas. And lastly, it is responsible for a number of long-term health disparities. So obviously the federal government needs to step in, but what can they really do if local governments are calling the shots? Well, luckily, I'll tell you, the federal government has one of the most powerful resources in the world: the power of the purse. We can literally change the rules of the game so that those who do zone their communities can receive greater funding through grants and tax incentives. CDBG, LIHTC, and STBG can leverage local governments to comply to these new rules. And HUD can actually make a playbook of best practices so it alleviates some of the pains that local governments have to go through. The solution is very real. It's tangible. It's literally right in front of our eyes. It's just not popular or fun to talk about. Thank you for your time. I'll see you next semester.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kent Ziegler. I'm a graduate student at Johns Hopkins University studying political communication, and I was an intern on the health team this fall. So within the health team, I worked on 3 different projects: behavioral health, rural health, and a blog. So with behavioral health, I worked on our crisis response report, which helped to develop federal recommendations to enable states to build out a behavioral health crisis response, kind of like emergency medical services does for physical health. On rural health, I worked on our rural hospital landscape piece, collecting data for, looking for what rural hospitals, how they're doing. And lastly, I co-authored a blog on behavioral health integration for children, in which we discussed how children can benefit greatly from receiving care in an integrated setting, in which the whole child is looked at, not just physical health, but also mental health. So my main takeaway from the internship has to be teamwork. I came into the internship just very overwhelmed and, thinking that I needed to know everything about everything health related. And I soon figured out that, our team is just like any other team. We all have a role to play, and we all have a common goal. And so working together, really helped me to learn and grow, and made me feel like a member of the team. So yeah, I really enjoyed the virtual intern experience. I felt like I got to connect with my team and have productive one-on-one conversations, which I think really made the internship worthwhile and very enjoyable. Sorry about that. So the biggest thing that surprised me about BPC is probably just has to be how thorough we are with making reports and recommendations. So much time and hard work goes into developing a report, from stakeholder meetings to roundtable discussions, to discussions with our consultants, and then weekly team meetings. I was just blown away at how thorough and how high quality and informed our reports and recommendations are. So yeah, just thank you so much to everyone on the health team and at BPC for making me feel so welcome and making me feel like a part of the team, and making the internship experience so beneficial. So thank you for that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Diana Bunghe. I have had the pleasure of working with the communications team this fall, and I'm sad I can't be live with all of you and my fellow intern Elizabeth. I unfortunately have a class, but of course school comes in first, so excited to be presenting ahead of time. So just a little bit about me. I'm a senior currently studying at Boston College. I'm studying political science and environmental studies. I have really enjoyed being here at BPC. I had heard of BPC and was really excited about the things you guys were working on and just the bipartisan agenda that you were pushing. That was something that was very important to me, and especially the diversity piece that is so central to BPC's mission. So a little bit about expectations. I was a little hesitant about doing a remote internship. I wasn't sure what the connectivity would be like, what kind of collaboration and networking opportunities I would have. But I'm happy to say that all of those expectations were false. There was no grunt work, and I was able to connect on a really deep level with my fellow intern and my team. And so I will be talking about that a little bit further down. So just some brief highlights, and I know Elizabeth will probably talk about this a lot more as well. Every day I had the pleasure of compiling press clips to track BPC's media coverage. I had never done anything like this before, so I kind of jumped right into it right off the bat with the help of Hanadi, who was my incredible teammate. Then another thing we worked on was media coverage in general. So one of the big projects we worked on had to do with the debt ceiling. So it was really, really interesting for me and a really cool experience to be able to see the trajectory of BPC's involvement in the media in relation to the debt ceiling. So Elizabeth and I collected top line statistics related to the debt ceiling. We were able to create graphics, and then those graphics were presented to BPC's board of directors, which was really, really cool. Another important highlight was Elizabeth and I worked on building press lists in Cision. I had used Cision before with another internship, but in this specific case, it was really cool to be able to use BPC's current projects to promote those projects using Cision. So there was that connectivity there that I found really, really cool. So I was able to expand my knowledge and usage of Cision. And then some other projects we worked on, I learned how to write media advisories, press releases, practice my pitching, and do some event coverage. So just a key takeaway for me within these projects, like some of the other fellow interns have mentioned, I've done academic writing, but this writing was specific in the sense of wanting to get reporters to look at what BPC is doing. So almost like persuasive writing, which was very cool for me. And it's definitely something I'm going to take away from this internship and hopefully use in other career settings. So kind of like I mentioned before, some outcomes, more concise, influential writing geared toward the press is something that I've really, really taken away from this experience. Another cool takeaway was data visualization. So like I mentioned before, we were doing a lot of coverage related to the debt ceiling and piecing together those numbers and creating easy, digestible graphics for the board and then just for the public in general to be able to understand BPC's coverage. The other really cool thing that I was able to work on was some social media toolkits, going to events and getting quotes and understanding what you should be highlighting and what you shouldn't be highlighting. And so finding that sweet spot. And then another really important thing for me was collaboration with other policy teams. So just being able to pick and see at what other teams were working on was really interesting for me. I'm really grateful to Mickey because she was so nice and able to connect my passions with environmental studies. So I was able to sit on some energy team meetings and infrastructure meetings. So I'm really grateful to the team for being so kind and taking my interests at heart and helping expose me. So thank you to Mickey, thank you to Blake, Lucy, Hanadi, just the whole team. You guys have been really, really welcoming and this has been such a great experience. So I'm really grateful to all of you. And of course to Elizabeth, it's been a pleasure working with you. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Wall, and as you just heard from Deanna, I'm the other comms intern. Some quick background on me. I'm attending Penn State as a senior, and I currently live in Wilton, Connecticut. BPC was a great opportunity for me since I'm a poli-sci major, and I really want to get my feet on the ground in DC, even if that meant virtually. I really enjoyed my time here at BPC this fall, and I'm really excited to share a glimpse of my experience with you all. So I know you just heard from Deanna, but I'm just going to share some of my expectations I had going into this position that were quickly disproven. For example, I thought I would mostly be doing grunt work as it's typical for most interns, but the comms team quickly provided me with responsibility and interesting tasks that aligned with my personal interest career-wise and also just in general. Additionally, I thought that the remote nature of this internship would have made it less integrated and perhaps a little isolating, but each morning the comms team has check-ins that helped me build relationships and really made me feel like a member of the team right away. I also was given responsibility when assigned my tasks, which was really fun and rewarding to work on projects with Deanna and the rest of the team. Finally, I thought that being remote would give me less connectivity with policy teams, but I also found that to be false. Me and Deanna got to shadow comms team members in their meetings, and I learned a lot through their interactions with the other policy teams. Now I'm going to discuss some of the highlights of the internships with some of the work that Deanna and I got to do. So Deanna and I traded mornings pulling BPC mentions to create the press clips that go out to the organization. This gave us a lot of familiarity with the media outlets and how to track press coverage, which was really useful because I had never done anything like this before. Additionally, we got to do a cool project for the board of directors meeting where we created a presentation making a story about the debt ceiling media coverage. So what me and Deanna did was collect top line statistics from press clips and create graphics, which made a compelling presentation, which was really cool to work on. Additionally, we got really familiar with Cision. I know Deanna had worked with it, I had not, so that was really cool to learn the inner workings of Cision. We made press lists, did media advisories on there, which was really great. Additionally, I got to make a press release, which was really cool and rewarding to work on. I personally made the student debt report press release, which was awesome, condensing a long report into a release. Using that kind of language was something I'd never done before, as some of the other interns have mentioned, so that was really cool to work on. Additionally, we got to do some pitch practicing and event coverage. It was really awesome to work with Mary Margaret and the digital team while we tweeted live events, directed social copy, and even got to do some event work. Finally, I'm going to discuss kind of what I took away from the internship and the outcomes of all the work that we got to do. So first of all, my writing became a lot more clear and concise. Writing for a think tank and for media outlets is very different. So this was a really valuable experience for me that I'm going to take with me through the rest of my career. Additionally, the data visualization and infographic creation work got me very familiar with Canva, and it was really fun to play around in there and do more digital stuff as well. I also have to give a special shout out to Mary Margaret, who I worked very closely with to learn a lot about events. I got to do recaps and even did some event stuff for this internship presentation event. That was really fun. I didn't expect to do that coming into my internship, and I really learned a lot from her and found an interest in events. Additionally, we got to do some social media toolkits where we drafted social copy, and that was really fun to work with Yafet and Hanadi on, as well as Deanna. And finally, shadowing the comms meetings with other policy teams really allowed me to see how comms and policy teams work cross-functionally, which was something that was really valuable to my internship experience. Wrapping up, I just want to say thank you so much to the comms team. I have had a great time during this internship. I have learned so much, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity. Hanadi really guided Deanna and I throughout all of our tasks, and I have to say a special thank you to her, but also working with Blake, Kyle, Mickey, and Lucy was so fun to do. I really learned a lot from you all, and I'm so grateful for that. I hope we all keep in touch, and thank you all so much.
Hi, my name is Lily Reckford. I am currently a junior at UNC Chapel Hill, and I have been on the housing and infrastructure team. So I was lucky enough to get to stay on from this summer, so I got to kind of carry over some of those responsibilities and continue some of the work that I had done. So I published a blog post comparing a couple of eviction bills that are currently in Congress, and this is a topic that I did a lot of research on over my time here, and so this was really neat to kind of see it come to fruition in this post. I finished a blog post on low-income water assistance, and I think I tended to spend more time on the housing side of things, so this was really cool to kind of dive deeper into infrastructure, which I hadn't done as much. I also drafted a literature review on accessing homeownership. And this is a topic that I really care a lot about. And so it was really exciting for me to dive deeper into it and learn more. And something that I'm actually going to really miss is creating a weekly housing newsletter for the Housing Council. So the other intern, James, and I, this is something that we've been cranking out together for probably every week in the last 6 months, just about. And so it's kind of strange imagining me not doing this in the future weeks, but I know it's in really great hands. I wanted to dive a little bit more into the low-income household water assistance program. This is actually the first ever federal water assistance program. So this is really exciting and definitely really needed because there are currently millions of households that are behind on their water bills, and water bills are just continuing to rise and rise year after year, largely due to failing water infrastructure. And so it's just becoming increasingly unaffordable and keeping more families in debt. So this is definitely something that is timely and welcome right now. There's about $1.14 billion of funding, and it largely comes from COVID relief bills, such as the American Rescue Plan Act and the Consolidated Appropriations Act. There's also a chunk of funding that comes from the Department of Health and Human Services. And so kind of where it stands right now, states have sent in their grant applications as well as their models for allocation over to the Department of Health and Human Services, and they're currently going through and approving those. But at this point, no funding has been allocated back to the states, which means that no families have received any funding at this point. So those low-income families and households are still really, really struggling. So this is definitely something that I am going to continue to look at kind of in the next few months and cross my fingers that hopefully this funding is able to be released soon. But this is definitely a really new and exciting program. Finally, kind of talking about opportunities that I learned, I had the really cool opportunity to be part of the new Ronald Terwilliger Center for Housing Policy launch, just to see how hard everybody worked on it and how much they put in, and to see how well it turned out was really, really cool. And I just know that it's going to have a very profound impact on housing and housing policy in the future. Also, just getting to see the bipartisan infrastructure bill finally get signed and pushed through. I know that's something that our team has been really excited about and really battling for quite a while now. And so just getting to be on this side of it has been really exciting. And I think both of these things are just really strong examples of bipartisanship and the power of bipartisanship. And I think it sets a lot of hope for the future and what can be done. And so that has just been really great. I think one of the main things that I've learned here is, even virtually, to just take advantage of the people and the resources around you. People really do want to help, I've learned. So take that help and use what you can, because these people here know definitely a lot. I'm also just really thankful for the virtual experience as a whole. As much as it would have been great to be in person, I realized that this opportunity would not have even happened for me had it just been in person, me being in Chapel Hill. So I'm definitely a big silver lining there, and thankful that it was able to be virtual. But finally, I just want to say a huge thanks to my whole team, but especially Andy, Owen, Nina, and James, who's kind of been my partner in this for the last 6 months. They have all been so wonderful and so helpful, and just great resources. And I truly could not imagine working with a better group of people. So big thanks to them. And I just know that this is going to really set me up well for my future endeavors. So thank you.
Hi all. No worries. Hey guys, I'm Douglas. I'm currently in my last year at USC doing a combined bachelor's and master of public policy program. And this past fall, I had the great pleasure of working on the economic policy project. So I just pulled together this timeline with a little bit of highlights over the past 10 weeks. I was able to attend the private roundtable with Representative Ron Kine and Coalition Partners for Funding Our Future, which is a really great peek into how BPC engages in active advocacy work to ensure that retirement security remains visible on the agenda. I also worked on questions for 2 different events. One was on the Social Security cost of living adjustment, and the other was a Yahoo Finance event with Phil Swiggle, CBO director, that just happened this past Monday. These are really great experiences for learning how to identify the context lay audience members need to understand the complicated issues that are being discussed, and ask questions in a way that hones in on how these broad events really impact American households. And on the research side, I had the opportunity to contribute to a briefer about the impact of student loans on the federal budget. And so I helped verify data for over 150 footnotes. And like many things at BPC, I think this is a little bit like drinking from a fire hose, but I really think there's no better way to learn about a new policy area. I also worked on an explainer about unemployment experience ratings, which is a little bit of a niche issue, but it's key to how individual businesses have their UI tax rate set. And also not listed here, but I also helped with data input for BPC's famed debt limit model. And I also am currently writing about the policy implications of earned wage access. So for me, just a little bit of general reflections. I think working at BPC really underscored for me the importance of networking in DC culture. But however, I've really found everyone I've talked to super approachable and really willing to extend the hand to help. So I want to echo what everyone's been saying about that aspect of working here. And even through my coffee chats with BPC team members, I was actually able to get connected with someone who works at the Office of Management and Budget, which for me is really exciting because that's a place that I would really like to land in eventually in my career. And I came into this internship really wanting to get additional writing experience. And there was definitely no shortage of that at EPP, which I definitely appreciate. I learned a lot about how non-academic writing at a think tank is really iterative, and the rigorous amount of data checks that go into making sure a report that's being published is accurate. And finally, regarding virtual intern life, personally, I've benefited a lot from being able to do from going on to virtual. This is my fourth virtual internship, and I'm currently out in Los Angeles. And so this has given me many opportunities to work in DC without having to make the big move. And the other plus side is that I'm definitely now a morning person, given the significant time difference. So just to wrap up, I just want to say a big shout out, thank you to my supervisor, Andrew, my co-intern, Isabella, and all the people on the functional teams, fiscal, higher ed, labor, funding our future. Everyone has given me amazing opportunities to make this a truly enriching and engaging experience.
Okay, hello everybody. So my name is, Hello, so my name is Brandon Gopalai, and for the past 3 months, I have been working as an intern for the governance team at BPC. And I've really enjoyed my time here, and I hope you all enjoy my presentation. So I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky, and I recently graduated from the University of Kentucky back in May. And while there, I was able to earn a Bachelor's of Arts with a major in economics and a minor in political science. So some of the responsibilities I had working as a governance intern at BPC was doing quite a bit of research, primarily on elections issues. Most of the work that I did involved working and assisting with the elections project. And like I mentioned, some of the issues I did was researching election policy and election administration issues. And I also would provide updates on news through sending news clips to the team, so they have a better idea of what's going on in the world of elections. And I'd also take notes from congressional hearings and other events so that we can get more information on kind of what's going on with elections there. And I also did a lot of data collection and data entry, specifically for collecting information on certain congressional officials, and also collecting information on events that our team has done in the past few months. So with that, one of my biggest projects that I worked on over the past semester was creating a policy memo based on the impact of partisan poll watchers and challengers. And the inspiration for this was that poll watchers and challengers would cause a lot of issues and have become more front-facing in the election sphere because of efforts to increase the amount of election officials, or sorry, poll watchers and challengers. So with that, the policy memo set out to see what the impact of more partisan poll watchers and challengers in elections might be. And while going through it, I found certain improvements that that the state and local legislatures could utilize and change to make it better. And some of the trends that I identified with that was that there was more poll watchers and challengers in polling locations now, and also that there are more challengers that are able to challenge voters in polling places from each political party, and also that more state legislatures have introduced legislation that can empower poll watchers and challengers to potentially take action against poll workers. So those are some of the issues and trends that I found through that research. And some of the stuff that I learned at BPC included more in-depth knowledge on election administration. Before BPC, I'd actually worked as an election worker for a few elections. So I had somewhat of a familiarity with election administration, but being in this position has allowed me more knowledge of what goes on behind the scenes and what can be done to fix what could be done and other issues. And also I learned that trust in the election process is also very important to making sure the elections stay free and fair and go smoothly. And that has been an issue that's been very contentious over the past few years. And with that, I've also worked. Also learned how to work within a policy team and learn to communicate in a virtual office, as that has been somewhat of a new thing for me. I have not done that before, and with that, thank you all for listening to my presentation, and I've enjoyed and thank you to the teams at BPC. And I will end it.
Hello, my name is Nick Gondek. For fall 2021, I was with the Business and Technology team. I'm currently a graduate student at the University of Chicago's Computational Analysis and Public Policy group in the graduate school. So apologies to anybody who has seen this spiel before. In my previous life, I was a wildlife biologist. You can see the tent that I lived in for about a year on the left side of the screen there, and a bunch of pictures of me with various birds. This is primarily for wildlife biology research. And I ended up moving into a more analytical role with automated acoustic monitoring teams. Basically, we would put out these acoustic sensors into the woods. They would record sort of continuously. We get the data back, build these machine learning tools to quantify and visualize calling activity, which turned out to be a lot more efficient than sending out a bunch of 19-year-olds like me to go out and count birds in the wild. And the thing that got me really interested is that, this team of sort of 30 people that lives in the woods and has this really entrenched idea of what wildlife biology is and what monitoring is. Turns out, you could replicate that with a couple of people in a lab, with a few acoustic monitors. So the idea was, how do you ensure buy-in for disruptive technologies and disruptive situations that put people out of work, make people's lives sort of difficult in the short term so that you can be a more efficient, more, resourceful society in the long term. And that's what brought me to the Master of Science in Computational Analysis and Public Policy at the University of Chicago, where I'm currently a second-year student. So the first thing that I did with BPC, right at the beginning of this fall, there was a big push for the Metaverse initiative. As people may be aware, Facebook just recently changed their name to Meta. They're very focused on Metaverse stuff. So this was very relevant in the early fall times. We were sort of ahead of the times, and I was collecting examples from the modern internet of games, media, and experiences that exhibit some qualities of this sort of decentralized metaverse idea. And it's kind of difficult to translate that in the same way that explaining the modern internet might be difficult in like the year 1990. So along with the tech team, we were proposing some creative ideas to translate those ideas into BPC's Metaverse initiative. And along with BPC's John Teresa, I co-authored a few blog pieces explaining the economic theory that differentiates traditional platform businesses that are offline with modern digital platforms and the implications on that for competition policy. So the next thing that I worked on was the state level privacy bill tracker along with Anna, Sabine, and fellow intern Rachel. We parsed through a whole bunch of proposed bills in all 50 states to understand this patchwork nature of state level privacy legislation. Something that was really interesting to me is we went through the various subheadings of the recently passed Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act that I'm sure everybody's aware of. It was a big surprise to me to see how much cybersecurity and AI related spending there was through there. And it was definitely eye-opening to read through one of these giant omnibus bills in its original form. So the main sort of thing that I worked on was a 4-part ML explainer series. And I tried to build understanding from the ground up for policymakers to understand what machine learning is used for, what those techniques do well, and most importantly, what they don't do well. So the very first one was basic ML techniques, supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement learning. The second one was complexity between these ML techniques from very, very basic best fit lines, which you can see on the left side of the screen there, to deep neural networks, which can have hundreds of thousands of parameters. Then I talked about bias in AI systems, how these ML techniques, especially these less interpretable models like neural networks, can pick up learned biases from biased data that they're trained on, or poor specification. And lastly, I talked about fairness metrics and equity and how these predictive tools, even unbiased predictive tools, can be simultaneously fair and unfair depending on which way you slice the data, and hopefully putting an emphasis on agreeing to what is the right way to be slicing the data for a certain kind of problem so we avoid this political gridlock. And then using this explainer series, I helped on a couple of case studies. The first of which being synthetic data, how I worked with Sabine to describe how generative AI tools are being used by the Census Bureau to synthesize decennial census data to promote privacy while hopefully maintaining accuracy. And I authored a piece describing 2 transformative uses of deep supervised learning, AlphaFold and RosettaFold, which quote unquote, solve a long-standing problem in biochemistry and are unlocking a lot of new avenues for drug development and therapeutics. So some of the takeaways that I had. Tech legislation is exciting in the sense that the partisan lines are not super well set, but at the same time, Congress members and members of the general public are not super well versed in the nuts and bolts of these issues. So it leaves room for compromise, but there's like a lot of legwork to get there. As someone from a computer science and stats background, it took some time to learn what a general audience really needs to know about an issue rather than what I'd really like to tell them about an issue at the risk of losing their interest. On the flip side, there are times when taking that broad stroke approach kind of takes all the nuance out of the conversation and impedes progress similarly. So as the tech team can surely tell you, especially with respect to my first few explainers, it took a few iterations to kind of achieve that balance. But ultimately, this newfound skill of breaking down this really complicated technical subject matter for a non-technical audience and knowing what to leave on the cutting room floor is what I value most out of my time with BPC. So thank you to the tech team for making me feel at home in the virtual world, including Babu, Michelle, Sabine, Anna, John, Tom, and my fellow fall intern, Rachel. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Henry. I'm a senior at Washington State University studying history and political science. And this fall, I've interned at the Campus Free Expression Project. Now, in most of the intern events that I've participated in, it feels like I've been asked quite a lot of questions about what this project does in particular, and for good reason. The idea of campus free expression is, especially in a place like social media, a highly politicized issue. It's often portrayed as being a politically conservative issue or a philosophically liberal one, which sort of places the project in an interesting position, a lot of which boils down to branding as a genuinely bipartisan issue, and reaching out to groups in and around higher education that span the political spectrum. So in terms of what the project does, I would say that that is a significant aspect, making this a genuinely bipartisan issue, which means that we rely heavily on the communication side of things, and avoiding a lot of the partisan bickering that happens, especially online. Now, apart from that, much of the project really is an exercise in political science and political philosophy. We really do spend a lot of time simply thinking and writing and discussing ideas about free expression on college campuses and how best to communicate them. And so I figured that one of the best ways to explain this is to show a bit of what I've been working on this fall, which is an explainer piece on self-censorship and why self-censorship happens in the classroom on campus. Now, already this topic might be generally characterized as a conservative issue, and there is good reason for that, because according to most data, conservative students do tend to self-censor more so than liberal students do. But what's often missed out in this framing is that liberal-leaning students also self-censor at remarkably high rates, at least 49%, according to one recent survey that I've been working with. And a lot of my research has consisted of explaining this dynamic, which is much more complicated than most standard framings of this issue tend to be. And two of the biggest reasons for that, I would say, as I found, are not necessarily political issues as they are social and behavioral phenomena. Social media plays a remarkably big role. A lot of students self-censor simply out of fear that someone is going to take what they say in the classroom and post it online and ridicule them. And over half of liberal and conservative students self-censor online for precisely this reason. At the same time, because a lot of contemporary political discussion occurs online, it has created some tensions in terms of having discussion in the unstructured space of the virtual world and then switching gears in the physical space of the classroom, which gets into the second major issue that's connected with social media, but it's largely very complicated social pressure and social dynamics. A lot of students self-censor for reasons like fear of receiving losing their peers' disrespect, or being ridiculed in the classroom or being confronted. But they also might self-censor for reasons like perhaps you don't want to offend someone else with your opinions. Perhaps you have looked at the demographics of the classroom, and depending on what the class is discussing, you don't feel like you have the authority to speak on a certain topic. Or maybe students have relationships in the classroom that they don't want to jeopardize by speaking. Now, this is problematic in a university context because universities primarily exist for the free exchange of ideas. And it can be difficult to do that if students in particular are not speaking. And overall, there's simply a lot of anxiety within and between students that accounts for a lot of the self-censorship here. Now, I'll leave my discussion of self-censorship there, but needless to say, this is a very complicated issue and much more complicated and interesting, I would say, than the standard political framing of the problem of self-censorship. Now I'll move on to briefly discuss my virtual internship experience. Most of my previous work experience has been in the field of journalism. I've never worked in a think tank before. I wasn't quite sure what to expect, especially since it was going to be virtual. Now, thankfully, my experience was not totally virtual. I live in Alexandria, Virginia, so I've been able to hop onto the metro and visit the offices every once in a while. Yes, the offices were empty for the most part, but I've nevertheless, working with my project assistant Marley and director Jacqueline, I have learned quite a lot of, I've gained quite a lot of experience as to the ins and outs of the think tank life and what to expect. I've learned a tremendous number of skills that I think can be transferable to any other career. And I am overall, I am incredibly grateful for the opportunity this fall to work with the Campus Free Expression Project, to work at the Bipartisan Policy Center, to meet so many great people, to have many great conversations. And yeah, I'm very grateful, and thank you for your time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Zelasco, and this fall, I interned with the Early Childhood Initiative team here at BPC. For a bit about me, I'm a current senior at Marquette University pursuing a degree in the business school with a double major in human resources and psychology with minors in theology, political science, and a self-created minor in nonprofit management. This semester, I've had the absolute pleasure to live and study in Washington, D.C., as Marquette sends 18 students to this beautiful city each semester to participate in their Les Aspen Center for Government. I didn't have much political science experience coming to DC for the program, and my motive was solely to learn about politics and a subject that I was previously uninterested in. I became fully immersed in this culture after starting the internship, and I've discovered a new enthusiasm for working in DC. My passion has always been pursuing a career in the education sector in some regard, and now that I've gained experience through this internship, I'm certain that I'd like to continue learning about policy work, education, and early childcare. Working at BPC has allowed me to observe how individuals interact from a variety of perspectives, and I wish to find a professional path that allows me to continue to do so in the future. In terms of duties this semester, I've enjoyed the diversity of work provided by my team. My largest project was based around this grant, and I've been fortunate enough to work on this initiative from its beginnings. The research seeks information regarding the future of work and how it will affect childcare by interviewing key players in the particular focus on COVID impacts. I was able to identify key industries and organizations in this region, as well as participate in interviews and write questions for the organizations to discuss in these interviews. This has been my favorite experience of the semester, since it's been fascinating to see how a project can grow from just a list of 5 firms to pages and pages of data, all unique to each industry. Additionally, I was fascinated by the contrast in each dialogue and how the political landscape influences childcare in different, but all sectors. I was also able to construct a how to interview document for my team to use to prepare for these interviews, as well as a document that outlines the project for each organization to look through prior to each interview. This document provided an overview and a draft of questions, allowing for thorough planning. The other project I was mostly concentrated on was generating a high-level document about the future of work, for which I spent time gathering materials from numerous briefs online about the future of work in various categories, such as women in the workforce, childcare influence, and so on. This paper grew to 34 pages of research, and as a final blog post for the semester, I've been working on developing an executive summary for all the information. In addition, I've taken part in several research projects on tribal and faith-based care, as well as taking notes on webinars, hearings, and briefings. Additionally, listening in on the Penn Hill/ECI/BPC action meetings about all that is going on with childcare on Capitol Hill was something that I look forward to each Friday. My internship experience surpassed my expectations. Coming to Washington implied a different energy in terms of career and work, and the uniqueness of each person's path is what I've grown to love the most. Each person I've had the pleasure of interacting with has years and years of experience behind them that they are bringing to their work constantly. The only drawback to my time was having to work virtually. Despite this, working virtually and being so enthusiastic about what I was learning each day allowed me to continue to enjoy the experience. In terms of acquiring and using skills, I was curious to see how my abilities would translate into a world centered around politics without prior experience, and whether they would make a real impact. My writing skills were both what I learned on and improved on the most, and it's something that I valued much. Without this internship at this point in my academic career, I would not have been able to further my understanding of political processes and the value of bipartisanship, since I never expected this new passion would take off the way it really did. What struck me the most was how large Washington is and how small it can also feel. When I mentioned BPC at networking events or in an academic setting, almost everyone was able to name many employees who work or have worked for the organization. I've learned how important it is to be proactive because everything is always changing, and I've continued to be open to new opportunities in any given situation. I genuinely feel that if I hadn't had this experience in the last 3 months, I would not be in the position I am now, wanting to pursue a rewarding career in government. I'd like to especially thank Linda Smith, Kathleen McHenry, and Mimi Vance for believing in me this semester and guiding me through an unforgettable journey in the past 3 months, along with everyone I have crossed paths with at BPC. I hope to continue to do so in the future. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Johnson, and I was an intern with the governance team this fall here at the Bipartisan Policy Center. I'd like to welcome you to my presentation titled My Intern Experience, What I Did, What I Learned, Who I Am. Hope you enjoy. So just to start out with a little bit about me, I currently reside in Harrisonburg, Virginia, but I'm originally from Dallas, Texas. So I'm not sure if there's any Cowboys fans out there. If you got to see the game on Sunday, I'm jealous because I did not. And then my educational background, I am a senior at James Madison University. I'll be graduating this December. And my major is political science. My minor is music industry, and I'm a graduate of Appomattox County High School. So this fall, as I said, I worked with the governance team, which is kind of like a combination of the elections project and the Congress project. So I was focusing on election administration issues as well as congressional issues throughout this fall. And just to touch on some of the main things that I worked on, for the election side, it was news clips. And this was when I would get the daily news from Election Line, and I would find clips from their original email and then compile them into an email for the news clip send. So for the elections team, I was compiling news clips that fit into what we were working on at this time. And then I also worked on press lists. So news clips and press lists were both two things that I had never done before. So I was a little nervous when I first started doing them, but the press lists were very helpful, something completely new to me. And just looking at people that are subscribed to receive our elections project material, as well as people that we can reach out to in the future in order to just build up engagement and have conversations about election administration in the US. And then another project that I worked on for the elections team was called 1 Year Out from the Midterms, where election misinformation stands. This was a discussion that we had that focused on election administration currently in the US. And we had 3 election experts. And what I did with this project was I transcribed the original transcript, I took notes on it, and also provided timestamps and key points and a summary for the video. And then for the Congress project, I was updating ACE content, which ACE is the American Congressional Exchange that we have here at the BPC. And I was also gathering data on the members who have participated in our program. And also I took notes on congressional hearings as well as meetings that we had. So some skills that I developed or built on this fall, I would say a lot of data entry, whether it was working in Excel or doing other things like that. There was a lot of that, which is very helpful. Synthesis of information, taking detailed parts of a discussion and putting it into notes the discussion was about. And then collaboration, there were projects that I worked on with Brandon, who has presented. We both worked in the governance team, and we would collaborate on different projects. So just making sure that we were both knowing what we were doing and getting our work done. So what I learned, this is just to kind of touch on some things for me, but they could also help others, I think. So flexibility is a necessity. There will be days when you come into the office and you're thinking, I just have A, B, C to do, but D, E, and F might get assigned to you. So you have to be ready to do other work, and also just to be a good teammate, it's good to be flexible. Have a meaningful yes. So you won't always be, well, most times you will be asked, do you have the capacity for this? Are you working on anything right now? And if you say yes, that you can do the project, make sure that it's meaningful. You don't want to bite off more than you can chew. So just make sure that you can fulfill the project. And then honesty is the best policy. If you don't know how to do something or you're not sure on what something means, just ask for help. People are more than happy to help you. Don't feel embarrassed or anything like that. Another requirement is deliver a great product. So if you know what your supervisor wants, then you'll be able to deliver a good product to them. Self-awareness is key. Know how you work. For me, I'm a visual person, so putting on a timer, seeing how much time I have, things like that are very helpful for me to get my work done. And then bipartisanship is possible. I think one of the biggest things I learned was that a lot of members want to work together, but I think there may be fear of, their constituents not liking that idea or just not having that platform. And BPC really helps Democrats, Republicans, Independents come together and just have that space where they can discuss ideals. And then lastly, what was the virtual intern experience like? It was rewarding, close-knit, interactive, and refreshing. Even though it was virtual, I really felt like I was a part of not only the governance team, but the Bipartisan Policy Center on the whole. And I just want to say thank you for having me. I truly enjoyed my time and I hope to stay in touch with you all.
Hi everyone, my name is Anne Straith. I've been interning with the BPC's Early Childhood Initiative. Just a little bit about me. I'm a student at Michigan State University studying world politics with minors in international development and French. I found my way to BPC after previous experiences working with the federal government, both with the Department of Public Service and the Office of Early Childhood Development at ACF. So it's been really great to see more of the policy side of things through this experience. And my main project during this internship has been drafting a blog post on the importance of childcare in rural America and its impact on parents' workforce participation. During this, diving into the rural parent survey and the childcare gap data has been very interesting learning experience. I've gotten to really see how that data impacts rural communities in the ways that data has been collected, and being able to read over that analyzing experience has been really great. And I'm really grateful to Linda, shout out to her for all of her guidance throughout this project. It's been a great learning experience and I really appreciate all of her feedback. And then a couple of other projects that I've been working on have been including organizing the weekly congressional calendar to keep the team up to date with what's going on the Hill, which has been a really informative experience. I've been reviewing and proofreading documents prior to publication, supporting ECI's tribal child care work and reviewing regulations and requirements for CCDF and CCTVG plans, as well as updating documents with current information to make sure all of our data is accurate. And then I've most often worked with Kathleen, Mimi, Sophie, and Branny, and it's been great to get to know everyone on the ECI team. I was lucky enough to be able to actually come visit the office and see everyone in person when I was visiting DC in October. So that was a really great experience, and thank you for that as well. And a couple of the things that I learned through this experience, I've been able to expand my knowledge of everything that goes into policy work, coming from a background of nonpartisan experience with exposure to federal agencies. It's been really great to expand my policy knowledge in a setting that really prioritizes bipartisanship. So I've really appreciated that experience and that chance to expand my knowledge in that way. And in working with the ECI team, I've been able to continue to grow my knowledge of issues facing the early childcare field, which is really going to benefit me as I continue in my career. And finally, I just want to thank everybody on the ECI team and everybody at BPC for such a great internship experience. I'm sure other interns would agree that BPC is very supportive of its interns, but it's been a really great place to grow professionally.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cecilia Esterline, and this semester I served as an intern on the BPC's immigration team. I'm a master's student at the London School of Economics, studying international migration and public policy. And prior to grad school, I worked in DC in immigration law, both with the DC Bar and with Fragaman. I completed my undergraduate studies at the University of Richmond, where I graduated with the class of 2018, and completed undergraduate internships in refugee resettlement, immigration legal services, and migration policy advocacy. This semester, I've had the pleasure of working on a number of exciting projects with the immigration team, and I am so grateful for the experiences that I've been able to have and learn from, and even all from across the pond. And I conducted research on immigrant entrepreneurship in the United States and on the impacts of immigration on our supply chain. I've also been able to work on improving my ability to gather and incorporate statistical data into research through census and CBP appropriation or apprehension data-related projects, among others. Even in my short time here, I've also been quite fortunate to attend a number of events, both internal and external, that have exposed me to industry experts and perspectives that I may not have been able to hear otherwise. And although only a few are mentioned on the screen today, each one was incredibly educational and an informative part of my experience this semester. While I have learned far more than we have time to cover today, one of the main things that I will absolutely take away from this summer is an improved understanding of how bipartisanship and legislative procedures work in practice, in addition to a better perspective on how think tanks operate within that space. While I have never worked for an openly partisan organization, this semester at BPC was one of the first times that I was actively, genuinely, and continuously encouraged to seek out a variety of perspectives across the political spectrum. So for me, attending events like the center right, center left, or skilled working group meetings, and being in the virtual room with individuals from a wide range of political backgrounds was an incredibly enlightening experience for me, and quite truly gave me hope for the future of bipartisanship in our country. And learning about the legislative process as much as I did was a rather unexpected benefit of my experience this semester, but I found it to be one of my favorite aspects. From the formal session with Bill Hoagland to our daily check-ins on the immigration team and formally chatting about the various political strategies, advocacy groups, or parties might pursue, I felt much more engaged in and aware of the current legislative practices than I ever have before. In all, I just want to thank every member of the immigration team and of the BPC for allowing me to take part in this internship. I enjoyed it even more than I had already anticipated that I would, and I am so appreciative of my supervisors and the HR team for guiding me every step of the way and making the virtual internship so accessible, even from an ocean away. Thank you all for everything, and I look forward to keeping in contact in the future.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Angie, and I am the development intern for BPC this past fall. And before I begin, I'm just going to give a little bit of background about myself. I am currently in California, so good morning from the West Coast. And I recently graduated this past spring from UC Irvine with a double major in political science and sociology. During my time as an undergrad, I had the opportunity to work on the development office of UCI Student Affairs, which brought my interest into development. And so being able to be a part of BPC, in particular the development internship, was just a wonderful harmony of my interests, my studies, and a bit of my personal beliefs as well. These past 10 weeks have just been absolutely wonderful. It's been great working alongside the development team, and there has been so much that I learned from the experience. So first, when I talk about my daily tasks, the most prevalent thing that comes to mind is the prospect research. Throughout the span of my internship, I worked on over 40 research reports, spanning from potential donors to prospective board members. And that does not include any of the short bios that I had to do for particular events that the development office was hosting. Throughout the prospect research, I utilized RELSci and iWave, which were both programs I had never encountered before, and so that was an interesting experience. But more importantly than that, halfway throughout the internship, we acquired Donor Search as a new search engine to look up prospective donors, and that was a new program for everybody on the development team. So I was learning on my feet alongside the rest of the team, and that was a very, very interesting experience. In addition to the individual prospect research, I also helped out with foundation research. So that involves scoping out peer funders who gave gifts to similar initiatives that BPC was involved in. Or sometimes I would look at one individual foundation and look up their giving history, see who they have given to previously, how much they have given previously. And that really allowed me to be exposed to 990 form. And I had mentioned this previously before during a Meet the Development Team social that I really got familiar with the 990 form, and that is one of the larger takeaways. But beyond those two, I also helped out with smaller things such as drafting letters, social media language, et cetera, very much helping to support the work that the development team does. Helping us send out thank you letters to those who attended our events, or crafting social media language for our, to start a small and little initiative on promoting individual givings through social media. So one of the biggest things that I wanted to get out of this internship was to learn how development work operates in the nonprofit / think tank world, because all I had known thus far before attending this internship was how it worked in the higher education sphere, which obviously is not too terribly similar. So the development team was very helpful, very supportive of my interest in what I wanted to learn. So I was able to, have a small chat with lots of members of the development team. They were very quick in responding to my emails, but they were just so eager to help, let me learn about how they got into development work, or some of the challenges development work, and offered me some advice as well. I was able to attend some of the revenue meetings between development and some of the other departments at BPC, since development work is very much intertwined with all of the work that BPC does overall. And I was able to work with some of the other project teams at BPC, in particular the Free Expression Project and Behavioral Research. I also learned the development stewardship processes, particularly for foundations, and that was also very interesting as well, because the people that BPC reaches out to is very different from those that my undergraduate school reached out to. So there was a lot of interactions between people on Capitol Hill, between very public officials. And it was very interesting when I'm doing my research reports, learning about, what they have done, what kind of givings they have. And because we are looking for people who have, supported bipartisanship, it was very fascinating to see, what these people have done to support bipartisanship, and learn about ways in which the development team interacts and tries to reach out to those people. So that was very much the biggest takeaway for me, although I certainly have learned a bunch of things as well, especially as someone working remotely across the country. It has been a very interesting experience because this has been my first internship, really. So I had never had the chance to be in person, unfortunately, which is one of my biggest regrets going in, kind of leaving this internship. But it has been very, they have been very flexible, very kind, very supportive, and I am very much appreciative of that. So I would just like to give a big thank you to all my time. And I want to give a big shout out to our development team. I know they are very busy. I entered the development internship basically hitting the ground running. And because the development team is currently working on our BIF party that's going on tomorrow, we have been very busy as well. And so, up until the end of the internship, I'll just be sprinting and working hard. And I'm sure the development team is as well. So I just want to give a big thank you to everybody in the development team, particular shout out to Tiffany and Leah, my supervisors, who have just been very supportive and very kind throughout this whole internship. And I just can't wait to end it off with a bang. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Lovegrove. I was the BPC Action Intern this fall. So a little bit about me. I recently graduated from the University of Michigan with a degree in public policy. I grew up in the DC area, so it was nice to come back here this fall and start working here in my postgraduate journey here in the DC area. And it's just been great to be back. And so on to my work for BPC Action. I got to handle a wide range of responsibilities and work in a really interesting cross-section of issues that BPC engages in. So a lot of that work was obviously oriented towards the various happenings at Capitol Hill. So that meant watching and monitoring a lot of committee activities. So I'd be watching, various committee hearings or markups, sharing my findings on those with the team. Sometimes I'd be looking for specific things. Often BPC Action will send up suggested questions or talking points in advance of these hearings for members to use. And I'd be checking to see whether they took up those suggestions. Sometimes they would, but in their own language. Sometimes there'd be a member basically reading straight off the email that BBC Action sent them, which was always funny to see. Beyond that, I also worked a lot on communications. So obviously BBC Action puts a lot of work into communicating with the Hill. That includes on social media. So I got to work on helping draft BPC Action's Twitter content each week. This was typically to highlight a lot of the work that BPC is putting out, but also it would be to share other things such as sharing BPC Action's support for certain legislation that's coming out, or as is the case this week, thanking members of Congress for supporting the infrastructure bill. Beyond social media, I was also working on those Hill sends that I mentioned previously. Those could have been, suggestions for hearings, but sometimes, and some of the projects that I got to work on were different. So some were newsletters, which like the Twitter content would highlight the various things going on at BPC. Others were more targeted. For instance, one project I got to work on was compiling information for staffers on the Hill about the benefits of the infrastructure bill for the states that their bosses represented. So that was a fun project to work on. Overall, I was constantly working on, just engaging projects. There was never any predicting what was going to come across my inbox on any given day. So it was rarely a dull moment on the BBC Action team. So moving on to certain takeaways. It's hard to sum up, all the takeaways that I have from this experience, but just to highlight a few that I think are most important. One, I feel like I've developed a much more nuanced understanding of bipartisanship. Working for BPC Action, I got to, gain a whole new perspective on how the parties work with each other, as well as against each other. And seeing, the political process develop and the debate around things like the debt limit or reconciliation, or the infrastructure bill, and making that bipartisan or trying to not make that bipartisan. I got to see how the parties work with each other. Secondly, as I'm sure everyone at BBC agrees, I gained a much greater appreciation for the difficulty of bipartisanship. I came to BBC having interned for a few campaigns, and so I've seen firsthand the effort that goes into creating wedge issues and exploiting wedge issues, and I've seen the volatility that can create. So that just, that makes BPC's work highlighting opportunities for cooperation even more important. On that note, I got to see how BPC and BBC Action try to influence the legislative process with things like the infrastructure bill or the debt limit. There were great opportunities to see how BPC tries to get involved in the policy process, even on legislation that has monumental importance to the national debate. And lastly, I think the main thing that I'm taking away from this experience was just how much I've learned. It was constantly learning new things while at BPC Action. Each week, I felt like I was coming out more capable than the week before, having learned new skills, developed new insights into the workings of BPC and Washington at large. When I first heard about this position, I figured it would be a great opportunity to just jump in the deep end, engage on a wide range of interesting work, and just see what lessons and skills I could come out the other end with. And I'm glad that that experience fully lived up to my expectation. So with that, I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Neha and everyone on the BBC Action team, and as well at BPC for giving me this opportunity to work with and learn from a great and just immensely capable team. So thank you very much.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Edwin Morales, and thankfully this semester I was given the opportunity to work with the Immigration Cross-Border Policy team here at BPC. And I just like to briefly introduce myself. I am a fourth year student at the University of Texas at Austin, pursuing a degree in government and Mexican American and Latinx studies with a certificate in public policy. And in particular, this last semester of mine, and I was granted the opportunity to come and live in DC for the semester to work and take classes at the nation's capital. And prior to this, I had almost no experience working in policy or think tank. Most of my work kind of centered working with nonprofits or law firms. And with that, it's more direct services or community outreach. And so when I came to DC, I really wanted to, find and expose myself in an area of policy that I have never kind of really taken a look into. And so I'm grateful that I've been given the opportunity to work with BPC this semester. But some responsibilities and projects that I was given this semester were creating daily immigration press slips meant to reflect current happenings in immigration and immigration world from a variety of sources that sometimes I never would have looked into or read about before. And then additionally, I was tasked with, trying to compare White House budget proposals regarding the Department of Homeland Security and different appropriations bills, and kind of figuring out where priorities were and what certain programs were being funded, such as the Afghanistan resettlement program, or also, providing funding to kind of reunite families separated at the border. And then I also did a lot of tracking and research on immigration-related legislations that are, being proposed on Capitol Hill, and then kind of, just synthesizing them for the audience in a digestible manner. I also was given the opportunity to attend meetings when other immigrant focused groups to kind of learn about what issues are being discussed or are coming up within the immigration world. And then finally, I'm currently still working on developing a blog post discussing 5 different proposed asylum processing bills and kind of the need to reform the current asylum system as it stands, given that the last, major reform was back in the 1990s. And so, as seen, it's an outdated system that needs current mending and, dire address. As far as learning outcomes and takeaways, there's so much that I can talk about, but I just, narrowed down a couple of here in my presentation. One of them in terms of bipartisanship is that immigration needs bipartisanship in order to kind of create sensible and true solutions. Because most of the time when you don't have bipartisanship, and then nothing's going to get accomplished at the end of the day. And so with that goes hand in hand with kind of figuring out what the specific, impacts are to the immigrant community on a more individualized level. And I also kind of was very surprised at how interconnected all these different actors were within the Washington, D.C. or New York area in regards to the immigration sphere. And it was interesting to kind of witness and see how, all these different actors kind of work together to kind of disseminate information that is helpful for one another, and kind of informing the public about, issues that are persistent in the immigration community, as well as kind of talking more about my virtual experience. I love that I was kind of able to attend all these numerous events and meetings that I wouldn't have been able to, given, that I'm from Texas, and a lot of events regarding immigration are not really held in Texas. But I was able to meet a lot of prominent, leaders in immigration advocacy or nonprofits or think tanks, and government institutions that I otherwise would have never kind of been able to meet. And overall, I'm just learning how policy works, right? I've been able to, kind of discover within myself, intersectionality of immigration work, policy work, and then, kind of striving for realistic goals and proposals that can help them in the community. And lastly, I just want to give a shout out to the whole immigration team, Teresa, Hannah, Cecilia, and Sadisha, who just left. But you've taught me so much. You're so knowledgeable about everything and kind of taking me under your wing to kind of learn more in a more digestible manner. So I'm grateful to you and BPC in general for this amazing semester. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chelsea McKevich. I'm a first-year MPH student at GW studying health policy, and I have had the pleasure to be working as the intern with BPC's health team this semester. So during my time at BPC, I worked within mainly coverage and payment, contributing to research for the Medicare Home Health Project. My responsibilities included updating the lit review with information surrounding the Medicare home health benefits, such as its history, who's included, covered services, and its structure. A majority of the time, I also identified relevant information surrounding the Medicaid home and community-based services. A lot of it was really just making a distinction between HCBS and the home health benefit, at least in the early days of the lit review. And within this project, I also reviewed past and present Medicare and Medicaid rules and regulations, just to make sure that it was feasible to utilize benefits in certain types of ways, and if we can actually expand these care services. Another project I have completed during my time at BPC was co-authoring the Behavioral Health Integration for Children blog. Much of the project, on my end at least, consisted of locating statistics to use, which was to really show the urgency and need in expanding behavioral health services to children who were specifically Medicaid enrollees. With this, my main responsibility was looking for ways to incorporate behavioral health integration into MCOs, and also analyzing previous BPC recommendations to expand on in the blog. I also attended stakeholder meetings where I gained a lot of great insight from leaders within the field of healthcare, specifically with health insurance and population health. Writing assignments were also a huge responsibility of mine. I was always editing and updating my work within the lit review and proofreading and drafting new information for the blog. During this time, or during stakeholder meetings, I also took many notes, which was either for information I could possibly use with the lit review or just for my own personal use, since I'm in grad school and I thought in the future it could help me outside of BPC. So the main lesson I've learned during my internship experience was patience. I've always thought that many written projects or assignments were straightforward and were done in a short amount of time, but that was not the case with either of my projects. And it really showed me that getting feedback is not only a way to make sure a project is holistic, but it's also a way to improve my overall writing skills. I've also learned an extensive amount about Medicare and Medicaid structure and benefits, specifically with that distinction between Medicaid, HCBS, and Medicare home health benefit. This in turn helped me understand the overall delivery of services within these two programs and how complex they really both are. That being said, I definitely have a newfound interest and appreciation for health insurance and CMS reimbursement and quality measures. I've also learned a lot about the writing process between both my projects and the steps that are needed to complete each. I gained new ideas also about how to link my experiences and what I've learned working with the health team and how to incorporate that into my graduate experience. And it's actually helped me a lot within classes. I think I have a better grasping of health policy in general, specifically with the ACA and CMS reimbursement. Collaboration was also a huge lesson for me, as I was constantly working with senior leadership and other interns. It taught me a lot about what it meant to be really engaged in a project, and it really also showed me new ideas and insights behind each project. So in conclusion, a big thank you to BPC and the wonderful health team for a great experience. I think everybody just made me feel so comfortable, and I couldn't think of a better place to work, honestly. I just want to give a special thanks to Brady, Dina, and Lisa. Thank you to Dina and Lisa for providing a lot of guidance for the Medicare Home Health Project. I really learned a lot from both of them, and they are so wise, and I would take advice from them any day. And then a really big thank you to Brady for being an awesome supervisor and for making my experience very smooth and enjoyable. And overall, thank you to BPC.
Hi everyone, my name is Shania and I was on the prevention team with BPC, and specifically I was working with the team as we were focusing on nutrition policy. And so there were a couple of focus areas. The bulk of my work was done on 2 of BPC's briefs. The first one was on COVID and food security. And then the second one was on the Childhood Nutrition Reauthorization Act. So for brief 1, that was published shortly before I started my internship. So I did more of my work with the dissemination process of it. And so through that, I was helping identify relevant stakeholders and policymakers on both all areas of the political spectrum. I also helped with the presentation that we gave to a hunger task force in Michigan State. So that is where we were kind of sharing our ideas that we had in the policy recommendations from our brief, as well as applying it to a state level and making it relevant to Michigan. So maybe they could take those ideas and apply them to their own situations. I also helped with the second brief. That one is still in the works, so it's not quite done. Hopefully it'll be published somewhat soon. And again, that one was on the Childhood Nutrition Reauthorization Act. And so that act focuses on programs like the National School Lunch Program, as well as the School Breakfast Program, Fresh Fruits and Vegetables Program. And so through that, I helped do some of the fact checking. I was also doing additional edits, as well as going through proofreading, making any content or formatting suggestions that I think would make the brief better. I also watched and took notes on several congressional hearings that focused on nutrition programs and other people's ideas on how we can improve upon them, and then taking notes and giving that to my team so we could maybe incorporate it into the brief. And then finally, I helped with a proposal for a FRAC conference where again, we're working on dissemination and sharing our ideas for our policy recommendations. So what I've learned, I would say the biggest thing I've gained from this is kind of learning what's going on behind the scenes when it comes to making policy recommendations. So this is for sure not a one-man show at all, nor is it even just a small team working on policy briefs. So there's a ton of work and there's a ton of collaboration that goes into publishing these reports. I also learned about methods for dissemination, as well as identifying relevant stakeholder and policymakers, and kind of deciding what's going to be the most effective way for us to share the message. So I guess I wasn't entirely sure what to expect when I first started the internship. I knew I was going to be helping with these briefs, but I didn't know how much editing I was going to get to do, if I was going to be mostly taking notes on some of the meetings, but I felt like I got to make some really meaningful contributions. And I also learned a lot about, again, what goes into the background work and making these recommendations. They're not just something you make up, there's a lot of research and thought behind all of them. And then any surprises? There's so much collaboration between these reports. Not only do you have maybe the team at BBC that was working on writing it, but you also have to talk to other members of the organization, as well as constantly going back and working with anyone in the task force or relevant stakeholders. So being a virtual intern, I would say this definitely increased accessibility. I'm from New England, so this wouldn't have been possible if it was not remote. I was also able to do this internship while I'm studying for my master's degree in nutrition science and policy. And it's been really cool to meet other students from various backgrounds who are also focusing on different areas of study. So that's kind of what I was working on during this semester. So thank you for listening to this. And I really want to thank everyone that was on the health prevention team for helping me throughout this semester and just being great mentors throughout the whole thing.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sine Lucas, and I'm looking forward to presenting to you guys about my BPC internship. So, yep, a little bit about me. I am from North Carolina, North Kakalaki. Specifically, I grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It's a semi-rural area, but it's a pretty big state, so I just love going to the mountains and the beach and things like that. One of my hobbies and passions is that I'm a chamber musician. I play viola and I play in a lot of classical music concerts and things like that. And I am a Clemson Tiger at Clemson University. I'm graduating in December and I am a political science major. So my focus within the BPC think tank was with the small business team. And small business is a very interesting focus for me anyway, growing up in North Carolina, where there are a lot of rural areas, and really seeing how small businesses bring a lot of economic growth to those areas. So for BPC, specifically within the small business team, they really wanted to promote the job creation, diversity, and competition and innovation that comes with those small businesses that really help communities flourish and grow. Some of the goals and focuses that the small business team had was reauthorizing SBA and PPP programs. So a lot of these are government programs that offer a lot of loans and fundings for businesses that might need it. And this was particularly important during COVID, where a lot of these small businesses were losing a lot of funding. There's also kind of an issue with so much information being passed around in these business certification processes. So there's a lot of moving parts, but not really a centralized system, not really a focused system where everybody can look to one place for all of this information. So when a lot of these businesses apply to these programs, they don't really know where to look. And sometimes the interfaces for the websites are kind of all over the place. So those are one of the things that, some of the things that the small business team wanted to really improve on. Another interesting aspect is the federal procurement goals. So another way that a lot of businesses make money is for the government utilizing their goods and services. So the government pays them for those things, and that's how they make extra money. But a lot of these small businesses aren't a part of that system. A lot of the government pays a lot of bigger companies, bigger corporations. So that's another thing that we're trying to see how small businesses are integrated into that process as well. So one of the amazing things about, BPC in general is just seeing their online resources for just like videos and articles and things like that. So one of the things that I did was just develop transcripts and take certain quotes and clips from a lot of the videos and online events that they had. In order for me to better take notes for these online events, I really had to also just have a general understanding of a lot of the small business concerns on both the local and legislative level. So, while a local business might have certain concerns, they may not be tuned into the legislative processes that happen on the Hill. So I also looked into, a lot of those as well. So some of the things that I have really been thinking about as this has come to a close is how the politicization of small businesses. So everyone kind of has their own view of what they think is best for small businesses, whether you're on the left or whether you're on the right. And being with BPC, you really see both of those sides. So I'm really grateful for that experience and really understanding bipartisanship from a very core level. And then, of course, you see the effects of COVID-19 with the way it's affected everything else. It's affected a very core part of our economic foundation. Small businesses offer so much, and being from a pretty rural area, and seeing these places shut down for a little bit, not come back, or have a very slow time building back up. It's just a lot of things in place that COVID has really affected. And then also seeing the different types of, seeing the overall survival rate of small businesses. A lot of people are scared to start their own businesses because, 5 years in, it might fail, things like that. There's just a lot of logistics around, having a small business. Sometimes it's the way that you are presenting yourself and presenting that business, but sometimes it's also due to, kind of the government system and how there can be some inconsistencies within that. It's also important for these small business owners to have a voice on the Hill, so people within the small business team are able to advocate for those people who don't really know about the SBA Small Business Administration programs and the payouts and things like that.
So it's really important for them to have resources so they know that, people like BPC are there for them and can advocate for those things. And lastly, one of the main things was I've really enjoyed working for a think tank. I have worked on the Hill a little bit as an intern, and it's definitely a different experience. It's also, a really great experience, but I just think, the Hill, you're more so on the receiving end of the information, the bulk of information that comes from the organizations or think tanks like BPC. So being on the other end of being able to be in the grunt of that research and stuff is just really exciting. And I just want to really thank everybody for making this such an amazing experience, online or not. It was just BPC as a whole is a great program. And I would recommend it to anybody, interested in these serious issues and topics. And I want to thank Dane, Anna, and John, and Michelle, some of the main people I was lucky to interact with. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. I hope everyone enjoyed the presentations. Thank you to the interns for presenting and all the staff for attending. I want to give my sincerest thank you to all the interns for a great semester. Also want to give a shout out and a thank you to the events team for putting on another great event, and to Fnan for all the help she provides. Have a great Wednesday, everybody.